Yeah, so now it's them, it's still trying to message me, and I'm like, I'm gonna send them back one of her spreads so they can know, like, I don't send them more.
All right.
I would have been like, if I was in your house, my dad would have choose one.
Okay, we're gonna start here in 2 Chronicles chapter 22 tonight. So before we begin, we're going to go ahead and have a word of prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day and for this evening where we can come together in peace to read and meditate on your word. Help us to have wisdom to understand the message for us and why you have saved it, to instruct us and enlighten us in your ways and in your righteousness. And so we thank you for all the blessings. And we know that the greatest of those is Jesus himself and all that he did to show us who you are and to demonstrate righteousness with the godly attitude and with love and care and compassion. We thank you, Father, for all the blessings and being a part of the household that you can lift us up and that we can have hope no matter the circumstances of life, that you always give us hope about the future. And we pray these blessings and thanks in your Son's name. Amen. Okay, so we are still really following along in Chronicles with the daily readings in Kings. So we're in that time frame where we have the king we have Ahab and his sons, and then we got the son of Jehoshaphat who is married to Ahab's daughter, but Jehu has been anointed by one of Elisha's. Elisha had one of his kind of messengers go and tell him, but he was anointed to become king of Israel, but with a primary purpose being to destroy the house of Ahab. And every male in it, so that there were no male descendants of Ahab anymore. But that even includes, unfortunately for Judah, a son of David who had married into Ahab's family. And that is Ahaziah, who we are looking at here in chapter 22. So I'm going to do one thing a little different tonight, and I'm going to read the whole chapter, and I'm going to ask you, what issues do you see that apply to life in a general sense? Not just learning these historical lessons, but how do these lessons that we're reading about apply in some way to the lives that we lead today? And so let's go ahead and read to start with. It says, "And the inhabitants of Jerusalem made Ahaziah, his youngest son, king in his place." Ahaziah is actually the grandson of Jehoshaphat, the son of Jehoram. And he said, he made him king in his place, for the band of men that came with the Arabians to the camp had killed all the older sons. So Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, reigned. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri. He also walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, for his mother was his counselor in doing wickedly. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as the house of Ahab had done. For after the death of his father, they were his counselors to his undoing. He even followed their counsel and went with Jehoram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, to make war against Hazael, king of Syria, at Ramoth Gilead. And the Syrians wounded Joram, and he returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds that he had received in Ramoth. When he fought against Hazael, king of Syria, Ahaziah, the king of Jehoram, or the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, was sent down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel, because he was wounded. But it was ordained by God that the downfall of Ahaziah should come about through his going to visit Joram. And when he came there, he went out with Jehoram to meet Jehu, the son of Nimshi, whom the Lord had anointed to destroy the house of Ahab. And when Jehu was executing judgment on the house of Ahab, he met the princes of Judah and the sons of Ahaziah's brothers, who attended Ahaziah, and he killed them. He searched for Ahaziah, and he was captured while hiding in Samaria, and he was brought to Jehu and put to death. They buried him, for they said, he is the grandson of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord with all his heart. And the house of Ahaziah had no one able to rule the kingdom. Now when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal family of the house of Judah. But Jehoshabeth, the daughter of the king, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the king's sons who were about to be put to death. And she put him and his nurse in a bedroom. Thus Jehoshabeth, the daughter of King Jehoram and wife of Jehoiada the priest, because she was a sister of Ahaziah, hid him from Athaliah, so that she did not put him to death. And he remained with them 6 years, hidden in the house of God, while Athaliah reigned over the land. By the way, this son that's saved is only about a year old, so he'll be made king. We read that this morning, right? He'll be made king when he's 7. So what do you see? What stands out to you about this story that in some way is applicable to life in general? Because when I make a lot of these comments on the daily readings through the years, that's kind of what I'm trying to come up with. What are the little lessons here for us? The things to kind of remember, that be reminded of, or to understand. Things that we can take with us. Yeah.
One thing might be that even if you feel like you're just, you can make a difference, like the sister did.
Yeah. Even if you're just one person, you can make a difference. Okay, like his sister. Yeah. I also think, I really think that there has been to me, a theme has kind of developed in recent years where it feels like women have, in history have had no real role. I just don't think that's accurate. Having official standing doesn't mean you don't have influence, because I think it's just not. It's an ancient proverb about the power of mothers, and the influence mothers have on their children, and that power shouldn't be underestimated. I think because it's not just we have the good example of this woman. But in this whole story, who's the evil? Who's the real evil? Besides Ahab and his family. In this particular story, though.
His daughter.
Athaliah. She's the one who's counseling her son in all of his wickedness. And so obviously, and where does that evil who do you trace that evil back to? Not only Ahab, but Jezebel is spoken of as maybe more influential than Ahab. There are times when Ahab submits to Elijah. And he's like, oh, wow, Elijah, he apologized. And then Jezebel learns about it and goes, I can't believe it. remember Ahab wanted land, and he's like, oh, but he won't sell it to me. And she's like, oh, I can take care of that. We're just going to kill him. That's not Ahab's plan. That was his wife's plan. And I think we sometimes make the mistake that you need to have official position, and this kind of goes along with your role, the idea of individuals matter. The things that we all do matter. And they can influence things that maybe we never even see. Right? When she took away this one son and took him, and kept, he's a year old. She might be just saving him because he's a baby. She might not be thinking, well, I've got to protect him until he can become king again. Now, she might be thinking that too because, by the way, her husband is Jehoiada, who is the priest who makes him king. So it's possible they think that. But it's possible she's just protecting a baby from being murdered. And that the impact that has, the effect that has. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah.
One of the things that stands out to me is verse 7. It says, but it was ordained by God. Even amongst all the chaos, and amongst all the bloodshed, and all the things going on between Israel and Judah,
Yeah.
it says it was ordained by God.
Yeah.
God had a plan.
Right.
Now, do you think that all these players that we just mentioned knew what was going on?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Right.
But,
Exactly.
But God knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
He was okay with these things.
They may not even have been aware what was really happening in Israel with Jehu kind of taking over and being, because remember, our readings in 2 Kings are kind of left out of this passage because this is focusing on Judah only. But Elijah and Elisha, they were prophesying to Israel, and they were dealing with the house of Ahab, and Elisha's the one that sent one of the sons of the prophets to go, tell Jehu about what's going to happen, and starts the ball rolling on just destroying the house of Ahab, all of his children, all of his sons, and he had a lot of them, and his wife, and so that there is nothing left. And destroying the household of Ahab, what in your mind, what does that mean? What is the extent of that?
Heirs, destroying heirs.
Okay. Yeah. And who would that be?
Male descendants.
It's primarily all the sons. So the daughters are not necessarily all going to die. But Jezebel is pointed out. Right? It's like, she's not going to continue the house of Ahab by herself. But her evil was going to be punished by God. And he had already prophesied it, what would happen. She wouldn't even be buried. She's going to be eaten by dogs and, all the things that did happen. But, yeah.
Going back to what Rich said about verse 7,
Mhm.
is how it says it was ordained, but then it also goes into detail about what would happen that made another thing happen that made another thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can be kind of related to today and how we kind of, forget what exactly God has control of and what we see God doing and how, he has control and sometimes things have to happen for other things to happen, for other things to happen. And sometimes we forget about that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. The principle of God he raises rulers up and he takes them down. Well, that also implies he's raised up an awful lot of evil rulers, hasn't he? Why has he raised up so many evil rulers? There is part of a purpose in it. We may not always know what it is. We may not see it going, forward. But there is purpose in having bad rulers. Kind of goes to my thoughts of, I have generally thought, I've said it before, I think people get the rulers they deserve. I think that's part of the reason. We get bad rulers because we deserve bad rulers. But bad rulers sometimes lead to change. and lead to better rulers rising up later. And because it kind of tends to wax and wane that way. But, reminds me of Esther a little bit, and the circumstances, certain things having to happen in order to, think about Esther, the story of Esther. This is just probably a teenage girl who's really beautiful, and the king wants some more wives, and he's just like, let's just choose the most beautiful girls and bring them in, and then give them, a year of beauty treatments, and I'll choose which one I want to marry. That wasn't a choice. She wasn't joining a show. That was against her will. And yet in spite of all those circumstances, she saved the Jewish people, or in part, right? God obviously using her to save the Jewish people. And so sometimes the positions we find ourselves in, whether it's because we wanted to be there or we were forced to be there, we can still have an impact on the things around us. So I think that's a good lesson. Yeah. What else do you see?
What about just being careful about the counsel you take?
Yeah.
I like verse 3 through, 3 and 4 about he walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, how his mother was his counselor.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wonder if he wouldn't have been that bad if he had not listened to his mother. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as the house of Ahab. For after the death of his father, they were his counselors to his undoing. You don't see that anywhere else that I remember.
Yeah, it does point it out, much like it does a little bit with Jezebel, the influence she has on Ahab. It kind of implies that both Ahab and Ahaziah are probably kind of weak, and they are almost tools used by, in this case, his mother, and in that case, Ahab's wife, that they seem to have had more influence than is often mentioned.
Don't forget his dad killed all his brothers.
True.
So,
It's true.
That could have been based on his mom's influence too.
Absolutely.
This reads like Judges as far as
Yeah.
despicable behavior.
Yes.
His dad killed all his
Right.
brothers, and then his mom kills all her grandchildren.
All the rest,
hers.
all the other sons of David
Right.
she can find.
Right, so it's pretty despicable.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a good reminder what Taylor pointed out, that God's still working. in it.
Yeah. I know in that verse 3, one of the things I think about is she might not have been some kind of official counselor, right? In some sort of in the kingdom, everybody knew she had some official role. But God understands her role in causing it, right? Who was I talking with the other day? You remember being kind of kids, and sometimes, did you ever where other kids would kind of encourage you, maybe an older sibling would encourage you to do something, and then you would do it and get in trouble, and they'd be like, well, I didn't do it. But God would know that, right? Your parents, they might, an older sibling might get away with that, with their folks. But God knows these things. He understands how, even the way we might influence other people that aren't seen by anybody else in the world, God knows. And I think it's a reminder that there is always going to be justice. Sometimes we feel like there's no justice for things, but there always will be justice. It may not be the way we think, might not be when we see it, but God will. That's why He is the avenger of wrongdoing. So, okay. What else do you see? Why do you think the mother wants to kill all the royal family? Now, I'm thinking now, because I read this and I go, is she trying to kill every male descendant of David's household? Is that what she's seeking to do? I kind of think that. Now, but I kind of wonder, because I'm trying to think of all the males through the year, from all the way from Rehoboam down. A lot of them had more than one son, I think that would be an awful lot of people. I would suspect there's a number of descendants of David, but not in this direct line of, people who have been kings so far. So I don't know if she's just destroying those kind of connected with Ahaziah and that family, or if she is kind of spreading out and just trying to get as far and wide a net as she can get. I don't know.
Ten sounded almost like she's being vengeful.
Yeah.
I mean, because it says now, Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah's son was dead. She arose and destroyed all the royal family of the house of Judah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a retaliation almost.
Yeah.
I think it's proactive, because everyone who's come into power has killed everyone else around them. I think
Yeah.
she's protecting herself, that if she kills them first, they can't kill her.
Does she want power?
Wow.
Because it seems like she's already been in power. I think there's a great sense she's already been the power.
Well, it's obvious she's not the one doing the actual killing. There's people doing what
Right.
she is directing.
Exactly. And they may know, and they may understand that they have to obey her. Because if she's Ahaziah's counselor, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I got to do what his mother says. So she wields power, obviously, right? Because they listen to her. And could it be a play for just power? Could it just be, because I think we look at a woman sometimes and we may think, well, maybe the motivation's different. She's just avenging, death of her son. But maybe she's power hungry like we think men are oftentimes. Is that possible? I mean,
Well, she was familiar with Jezebel.
yeah.
And Jezebel wasn't
Actually, she's
wall.
probably Jezebel's daughter. I mean, Ahaziah, Ahab probably had other wives because he had a whole bunch of children. But I don't know if it mentions she specifically. It does mention she's Omri's granddaughter, which is just Ahab's father, who is also evil. But probably Jezebel's daughter, I'm guessing. I don't know if anybody sees a specific mention of that. So the apple might not have fallen far from the tree, as they say. Yeah, we look at situations like this, and I think sometimes, we read what's there, but then, what's the motivation for doing all this killing? Revenge. I mean, the standard motivations people typically kill for, money, power, vengeance of some sort, getting back at people. And so, but I think it does sometimes surprise us to see a woman rise up and do this much murdering.
But doesn't it also show what happens when nations turn from God?
Yeah.
I mean, this is chaos.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And this is like Ben said, this is very similar to what happens in Judges.
Sure.
You see the cycle of bad kings and I mean neither Israel nor Judah were scoring very highly
Right.
in their observance of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was a tough time for the nation.
It was a tough time for both nations, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to why I mentioned Jehoshaphat, as good as he was, made the mistake of marrying his son to Ahab's daughter. And the alliance that he makes with Ahab had a really huge, tragic effect on Judah.
Well,
Right.
God didn't approve it.
He certainly didn't. I mean, Jehoshaphat himself got reprimanded toward the end of his life as well for some of the things that he did.
It's just chapter 21, verse 6
They say.
says that Jehoram was married to Ahab's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and then Athaliah being a grandchild of Omri.
Mm-hmm.
So either Jehoram married multiple of Ahab's daughters, or this is the same one,
Oh, okay.
which I think is possible, I
Yeah.
guess.
It would be possible, but yeah. So, I think it also sometimes you hear people say, it's like, well, you know, boy, there's all this war and there's all this trouble. If we just had women leaders, then it would all be different. It would be so much more peaceful. I really don't think it'd be a whole lot different. I don't think so, but I know some people think that it would be. But I don't know. And there's been, even in the 20th century, been a number of women rulers of kingdoms that were at war as well. Not sure that changed a lot of circumstances about the battles between kingdoms. Seems like tribal conflict, I think, is just essentially inevitable. It seems like it to me in the world.
Human conflict is all.
Human conflict, that's probably a better way to put it, yeah. Okay. Okay, any other things that you notice?
I guess one thing that I'm kind of thinking about is listening to all these conversations is how we belong in a kingdom and worship a king that cannot be overthrown, that cannot be killed, and its kingdom thrown into chaos. And, you know, that should give us a lot of peace and comfort that, you know, our king can't be overthrown.
Mm-hmm. And he's already won.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's already defeated the world. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Which I do think is part of what passages in the New Testament are talking about. That's why we should understand the victory and have that confidence because of that. That it doesn't really matter the squabbles that happen in this world. And because they're just going to go this way. They're going to go bad, good. They're going to wax and wane back and forth, and you know, getting caught up in the politics of any kingdom, kind of pointless to a great degree. It doesn't mean if you have the ability to affect it in a positive way, then maybe we shouldn't do that, but it's not that important in the big scheme. Okay, well, let's read start in 23 then, unless somebody has anything else about that. Okay, so, but in the 7th year, Jehoiada took courage and entered into a covenant with the commanders of hundreds: Azariah, the son of Jehoram, Ishmael, the son of Johanan, Azariah, the son of Obed, Messiah, the son of Adiah, Elishaphat, the son of Zikri, and they went about through Judah and gathered the Levites from all the cities of Judah and the heads of fathers' houses of Israel, and they came to Jerusalem, and all the assembly made a covenant with the king in the house of God. And Jehoiada said to them, "Behold, the king's son, let him reign, as the Lord spoke concerning the sons of David. This is the thing that you shall do. Of you priests and Levites who come off duty on the Sabbath, 1/3 shall be gatekeepers, and 1/3 shall be at the king's house, and 1/3 at the gate of the foundation, and all the people shall be in the courts of the house of the Lord. Let no one enter the house of the Lord except the priests and ministering Levites. They may enter, for they are holy, but all the people shall keep the charge of the Lord. The Levites shall surround the king, each with his weapons in his hand, and whoever enters the house shall be put to death. But with the king when he comes in, be with the king when he comes in and when he goes out." The Levites and all Judah did according to all that Jehoiada the priest commanded, and they each brought his men who were to go off duty on the Sabbath with those who were to come on duty on the Sabbath, for Jehoiada the priest did not dismiss the divisions. And Jehoiada the priest gave to the captains the spears and the large and small shields that had been King David's, which were in the house of God. And he set all the people as a guard for the king, every man with his weapon in his hand, from the south side of the house to the north side of the house, around the altar and the house. Then they brought out the king's son and put the crown on him and gave him the testimony. And they proclaimed him king. And Jehoiada and his sons anointed him, and they said, "Long live the king." I'll go ahead and read this next part. So when Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and praising the king, she went into the house of the Lord to the people. And when she looked, there was the king standing by his pillar at the entrance, and the captains and the trumpeters beside the king, and all the people of the land rejoicing, blowing trumpets, and the singers with their musical instruments leading the celebration. And Athaliah tore her clothes and cried, "Treason, treason!" Then Jehoiada the priest brought out the captains who were set over the army, saying to them, "Bring her out between the ranks, and anyone who follows her is to be put to death with the sword." For the priest said, "Do not put her to death in the house of the Lord." So they laid hands on her, and she went into the entrance of the horse gate of the king's house, and they put her to death there. So, makes me think, look at the king standing there. He's 7 years old, standing there in all his glory. It'd be kind of a funny scene to me. What do you think about this? Yeah.
I think we see a very gutsy high priest. He knew what was right. He was going to put this kid into power.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing it,
Yep.
It talks about all these, it sounds like to me that he did it when there were two shifts of the armed guards of the house of God
Yep.
there.
Well, and they had went throughout the whole land and gathered them to Jerusalem too.
He was expecting confrontation.
Yeah.
And
He clearly
so,
had set it up. 6 years later,
yeah.
we're going to get rid of her and put the king in place.
Now, that gives you an idea too about what kind of ruler she probably was as well.
Yeah, because the commanders all the commanders went willingly.
Yeah.
They're all ready to follow the priest, not her.
And what we see is things getting kind of put back in order after all this chaos.
Yes. Yeah. You can see that? Oh.
I was gonna make a snarky comment.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Who wants to hear Ben's snarky comment? Oh, okay. We had a couple.
It's a priest and a preteen. It sounds like a sitcom.
I don't know. He's barely beyond toddler. he's like first grade.
Well, it was interesting that there didn't seem to be anyone interested in defending her, protecting her, or anything. They were just like, take her out and kill her. It was just kind of like, okay.
It doesn't mention putting a whole bunch of other people to death. He's like, put anybody who follows her, put them to death too, and it only mentions her dying. So, now,
Reading on, it says the people of the land rejoiced.
yeah, exactly.
And the city was quiet after she had been.
Yes.
She killed her own grandkids and her
Yeah.
husband's grandkids. I don't know
How could
how nice she was to her own servants.
how could anybody in her kingdom have trusted her with her killing her own family? You would be obeying so you didn't die, right? Pretty much. But when there's a chance, when somebody has kind of gathered something together to oppose her, some power, you're going, oh, okay, well, let's go to there. This seems better. Yeah. This isn't the first time this essentially happens. Can you think of the other time that a mirror of this happens? Very similar circumstances happen again. A king who will be raised by a priest. I think it's Josiah is saved from being killed and is raised by a priest and becomes king. Isn't it Josiah? It happens again. I think it's Josiah. And the thing is, both times this happens, the kings are very good. I didn't be able, there must be another one as well. One, because there's one that mentions the king is really good as long as the priest is there.
That's Joash.
Is that Joash?
Yeah, I was gonna say 24.
Is it Joash here? Okay. Is it? Does he? Oh, it is. Okay. So he's the one. I think Josiah is the other one, though, who is also influenced by a priest. Saved when he was a child, becomes king when he's 18. But is he? Huh?
God kills him before he destroys the nation as a blessing to him.
Yeah. So he's, and in fact, he's kept away as a baby. He isn't actually highly influenced by Manasseh's, because he's a son of Manasseh. I mean, Manasseh's as bad as it got. I mean, Manasseh's as bad as Ahab. But Josiah, having been kept away from him really young and raised, and pretty sure it's a priest who raises him. Josiah seems to be influenced again. Is it not Josiah? Is that you looking?
It's 2 Chronicles 33, 34. At least in Chronicles, it doesn't mention him being raised by a priest. It just says he
Is
was
it-
8 years old when he began to reign.
He was 8 years old when he began to reign. I think he's 18. Anyway, didn't mention. I'd probably have to go back to Kings. We'd have to read about it, I think there. Seems like it's Josiah. Seems like this happens one other time though, where a king is separated out young.
Sort of, it reminds me of Moses. The Pharaoh, was concerned with all these Israelite boys, tried to kill them all to control
Yeah.
any uprising, and Moses was hidden away. And so it's kind of like no matter how much power you have, you can't thwart the will of God. You will find a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes there needs to be a cleansing of the house. And sometimes it's good to have somebody who hasn't been influenced by all of this evil that has gone before it. I'll have to go back. But I think Josiah is saved by a sister or something. Seems like it's Josiah saved by his sister. I don't know. If you see it and you mention it.
In 2 Kings 21, 22, it talks about that, and it just says that his father was conspired against and that he made him king when he was 8.
Okay. Doesn't mention being sister saving him at all. Could be confusing it with this, I guess. Okay. In that case, with him becoming king at 8, I think is there a note there? It might be 18.
I think it says when he was 18, he decided to seek the Lord.
Oh, okay. 18, he does something. All right. Think about a 7-year-old. Is a 7-year-old running the kingdom? So Athaliah was the power in Ahaziah's kingdom, right? Who's probably the main power, at least early in Joash's kingdom? Jehoiada. He's the one that brought all the people and got everybody to, rally together to raise up a 7-year-old. Because you're not going to rally to a 7-year-old, right? The only reason you rally to a 7-year-old is because you hate who's in charge. You hate who is in charge, and that person has the right lineage for ruling. And somebody is putting that person in that position, and in this case, it's Jehoiada who's making that. And in Josiah's case, it's going to be similar. At 8 years old, he's not going to have the power to make those things happen. Somebody is making that happen. Somebody else with power and is able to cobble together support militarily for that king is able to do that. So. Who are you thinking of? I saw the snarky smile, so you thought of somebody.
Oh, I was just laughing at them.
Oh.
It was genuine joy.
Genuine joy, okay.
I mean, this one.
It wasn't snarky joy, okay, it was genuine joy.
Not shouting Freude.
I think we see a contrast here between the counselors of previous, we have Joash, who's got Jehoiada, basically counseling and helping him, where the one before,
Yeah, keeping all the names,
Ahaziah,
yeah.
did not have good counselors.
Right, right.
And
The value of counselors.
yeah, because the counselor that he had was a counselor that was a priest.
Yeah,
And it sounds like a good priest,
Mhm.
because he was trying to get things back to what he knew was right.
right.
And that's reflected also in the next part of the reading with some of the things that Jehoiada was, implementing.
hmm Yeah, it really seems, I think this was part of today's reading, that because there becomes Joash then makes an attempt to repair the temple. You can see how Jehoiada might be influential in that as well. And yet the story,
Josiah was similar to
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they'd go through a whole process as well. Because he has the influence of a priest in his life, as a child. And that priest is influencing him as a ruler. And the temple, important. And, that's Josiah's time when they find the law again.
And what you see is a young king influenced by a positive, godly counsel, where
Right.
with a grown-up king, they choose their counselors.
Yeah. Yeah. The sons of kings, you never quite know what you're going to get with each son. What are you saying?
Even with these priests, though, they're kind of helping these kings reign. Jehoiada, Joash puts the box out there and they collect, and the work just doesn't get done. Well, that falls under Jehoiada's
Yeah,
responsibility.
it's an interesting story, and we'll talk about it next week. It was in today's reading, but it's going to be the next part, chapter 24. Yeah, we'll talk about
Joash,
it.
too. Joash was king for, not Joash,
Josiah.
Josiah was king for 10 years before Hilkiah finds the law
Yeah,
buried in the back of the temple.
Right.
What's Hilkiah been doing for 10 years?
yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. You don't really know.
Change doesn't happen quickly.
Right.
But I just wonder about these priests.
Well, there's definitely an implication that the priests aren't all being all that faithful with all the money that's being collected to repair the temple. Because the story, we read in Kings this morning doesn't specifically say something about them, but it's like they collect money for a long time, nothing happens, and then the king starts taking the money, and then he pays it to the workmen who deal honestly and get work done. It's like, okay. It seems like seemed like there was some bureaucratic malfeasance going on before the king took it away from the priest. So, and that is the problem, because remember, these priests they're not priests because they chose to be. They were priests because they had to be. You were born a priest. You are a son of Levi and a son of Aaron. You are serving as a priest. And you can imagine if just some family were all the priests, how some of them would be good and some would be terrible. And that is historically true. We see that even before the king started. That was true of the priests. So.
Jerusalem is conquered by Babylon, that there's still pagan sacrifices happening in the temple.
Mhm.
That has to happen under the supervision of the priests.
Right.
Or at least with their awareness.
At least some of the priests know. Yeah. I mean, the high priest, priest underlings could be doing things the high priest wouldn't know about. I can see that. But sometimes the high priest could be bad too. And so it kind of goes both ways. Yeah, because we'll stop there. But the prophets, they see the visions that of the worship of other gods going on in the temple right before it was destroyed, in 600 roughly. So, okay, we'll continue on in chapter 24 next week then, and we'll talk about then the Joash and the temple, and then his fall later. So, here's a theme for next year.
I figured you guys would
So this is what
Oh, these, I thought you were But the asterisk ones, those are the ones that I sent you guys earlier.
Yes.
That makes sense, that makes sense. That's fine.
Tara. Okay, so your class is out, right? You weren't in there. Oh, okay. Just double checking because I didn't know for sure who was back there. I see Zoe. Sorry. So let's. I'll have you mark a song in your books for our invitation, for after our invitation. Song number 839 will be after the announcements. 839. And before that, we'll just flip over one page to your left, and we'll sing 837. 837. I need thee every hour. There's no dynamics written in this book. In fact, I don't remember seeing a lot of dynamics in most of these books. But I would like to have this sung with what would be considered mezzo piano, which is somewhat softly. Not necessarily quiet, just a little softer than normal. No, do, mi solo. I need thee every hour, most gracious Lord. No tender voice like thine can ease afford. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. I need thee every hour. Stay thou nearby. Temptations lose their power when thou art nigh. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. I need thee every hour, in joy or pain. Come quickly and abide, or life is vain. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. I need thee every hour, most holy one. Oh, make me thine indeed, thou blessed Son. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee. Amen.
A lot of announcements tonight. Not all pleasant. So a number of people have been gotten sick recently. Mendel sick tonight. Lily sick tonight. I think Alex not singing because his throat is sore at least. Mark mentioned his father, Bob. If you keep him in your prayers. Health is not great, and age complicates treating that. So if you can keep them and the family in your prayers, they would appreciate that. I don't know if all the others that were listed Sunday are still not feeling well or not. Is your dad back still problematic? Still not great. So Brian's back, and Sherry was sick. Ava, Frank, Hunter, and then Lori White we mentioned Sunday was in the hospital. Mentioned again Sunday night. She has cancer. It's metastasized pretty extensively. She's still in the hospital. Debbie's supposed to visit with her tomorrow. Doesn't seem good for her. They wanted to send her home to hospice. The fact they haven't done that yet is kind of unusual. Once they want to, usually they send you home, with hospice, and that usually happens fairly quickly. So keeping her there, keep them in your prayers.
Can Lori have visitors, or does she want them?
She probably can.
She can have up to two at a time, but,
2 at a time.
she's in a lot of pain,
Yeah.
so you probably should text her first and make sure.
Probably. So if you want her number, you have her number. Yeah, she's probably on a lot of medications as well for pain. So that a lot of those medications will make them very tired and sleepy a lot. So those are the ones I. Oh, that's right. Becky's dad got COVID. So is he doing okay so far? Or doing okay, but her dad, keep her dad, Alan, in your prayers as well. I think that was the only ones I remember. So we had a bit of a few extra this evening than normal on a Wednesday. We were talking a lot about the kingdoms today in our class out here, and just the turmoil that that Judah and Israel suffered through all of the hundreds of years of kings that ruled amongst them, up and down, bad and worse, and I think excellent comment made about how wonderful is it for us to be part of a kingdom that doesn't happen, right? I mean, our king, he doesn't change with the wind. His kingdom is not of this world. The glory of it doesn't exist here. And so it's all prepared for us someday. And righteousness and love dwell there. And he remains king forever, And so the one who gave his life for us, sits on the throne. And it made me think of the promises given to the churches in Revelation 2 and 3. I thought I'd read a couple of the promises just at the end of each of the letters to the churches. He says, "He who has an ear," in 2:7, "let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God." And then he also said in verse 11, "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death." And then in verse 17, "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will give him of some of the hidden manna, and I will make him, or give him, a white stone with a new name written on the stone that no one knows except the one who receives it." And so the promise given to a lot of these suffering Christians was hope. That I know things were difficult for them, but he said, you just overcome the difficulty, overcome the trials, just keep battling to try and do the right thing in all the circumstances of life, and I will give you all the promises and all the glory that I have prepared for you. And I think sometimes we need to keep that in mind in order to really overcome even daily trials, the trials of the flesh, the trials of the loss of loved ones, the sudden surprises by even, Roxy passing away in her 30s, suddenly. These are all kind of shocks to the system, and reminds us that life here isn't very long. And the older people get, the more they realize how quickly things seem to just keep going by. And when you're young, it seems like it's forever between all the good stuff you want, and then as you start getting older, it just seems like it speeds up. And but no matter how much time we've spent on this earth, whether it's a little or a lot, we all have an eternity prepared with these promises he gave us. To eat of the tree of life, to to sit on the throne with him, to not be hurt by death anymore. And so those are all, especially when we see so much death around us, that's a good reminder for us that death is itself a temporary thing. It's not a forever thing. It's not a permanent thing. Doesn't have to be for us. And we look forward to that time when all the tears and all the sorrow and all the challenges and tribulations can be lifted from our shoulders. So, and God has promised all of us those things. If you're here tonight and suffering or enduring something and you could use some help, just somebody to talk to or something specific that you need, we would like to do that for you. And so if you need anything, go ahead and reach out to us or come forward. Let's go ahead and stand and sing.
In his time, he makes all things beautiful. In his time, Lord, please show me every day as you're teaching me your way, that you do just what you say in your time. In your time. In your time. You make all things beautiful in your time. Lord, my life to you I bring. May each song I have to sing be to you a lovely thing in your time. We'll be led in a closing prayer.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful that you've given us this chance to come together to study your word, to consider one another, to encourage one another, to help each other live faithfully in this life. We ask that you would help us to remain focused on what's truly important, on what you've given us to do, and the hope that you've laid before us. We know that your Son has conquered this world, and through our faith and our trust in him, we also will be considered conquerors. Because of that, we will receive the reward of heaven when we're done here. We ask that we would all live in a way that reflects your Son to those around us, that we truly can bear the name of Christians. We ask that you be with those who are sick, with those who were mentioned tonight, that you would bless them, that you would comfort them, that something might be done to help through the hands of your servants here. We ask all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.